A samurai stands on the battlefield, surrounded by 10 enemy warriors. Arrows fly towards him, spears are hurled with brutal force, swords cut through the air seeking his body. But nothing touches him. He moves as if invisible, as if he had a magical shield around him. The secret? It wasn't luck, it wasn't just skill, it was something he wore. Something created with such advanced ingenuity that it completely changed the rules of war in feudal Japan. Today you will discover the trick of the armor that made samurai virtually untouchable on the battlefield. And prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear will completely change everything you thought you knew about these legendary warriors. Samurai armor was not merely protection, it was a psychological and physical weapon simultaneously. When Westerners first saw a full suit of samurai armor, the yoroi, they were impressed not only by its beauty, but by something that defied all European military logic. While medieval knights wore solid metal armor, weighing between 30 and 50 kilograms, making them slow and vulnerable when they fell from their horses, a full samurai suit of armor weighed only between 20 and 25 kilograms. How was this possible? The secret lay in the layered construction of different materials, a technique called kozain, where small plates of metal or leather were lacquered and tied together with braided silk cords. Each plate was individually treated with urushi lacquer, a resin extracted from specific trees in Japan that created a waterproof and incredibly resistant layer. This technique not only made the armor lighter, but also created a flexibility that allowed the samurai to move with an agility impossible for any European knight of the same era. Imagine being in combat and being able to rotate your body completely, crouch, roll on the ground and get up quickly, all while being protected against cuts and arrows. This mobility was the first trick that made the samurai so fearsome, but the ingenuity went far beyond the weight. The way the plates were arranged created something revolutionary, an angled defense system. Each metal or hardened leather plate was positioned overlapping, creating an inclined surface that not only blocked direct impact, but also deflected the force of the blow. When an arrow struck the armor, instead of penetrating, it slid across the lacquered surface and the angled plates, completely losing its penetrating power. Modern tests conducted with authentic replicas of samurai armor showed that arrows fired from 50 meters, which would be lethal to an unprotected soldier, simply ricocheted or broke upon hitting the yoroi. The same happened with sword cuts. An opponent's katana, attempting to cut the armor, encountered not a flat solid surface, but hundreds of small lacquered plates at different angles, causing the blade to slide without causing real damage to the samurai. This deflection principle was so efficient that it even influenced the design of modern combat helmets. Neck protection was another crucial and absolutely ingenious element. The nodowa and yodare keke were pieces that protected the throat and chin, made from the same lacquered plates, but with a fascinating detail. They were designed to move with the warrior's head, never restricting his peripheral vision or his ability to look up, down, or to the sides. This was vital because, on Japanese battlefields, samurai fought not only against other samurai, but also against ashigaru archers, infantry soldiers who attacked in groups and from multiple directions. A second of blocked vision could mean death. The artisans who created these armors deeply studied human anatomy and the movements necessary in combat. They tested each piece with real warriors, adjusted, modified, until the armor became practically a second skin. There were documented cases of samurai fighting for hours on end without feeling excessive fatigue due to the weight or restriction of movement of the armor. A famous example is the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where warriors fought from dawn until mid-afternoon, executing complex sword, bow, and spear movements, all while completely protected by their armor. And can you imagine the dedication required to create something so perfect? Think about the combination of art, science, and real combat experience that was necessary. Leave your opinion in the comments about what impresses you most about this Japanese military engineering. The helmet, the kabuto, was perhaps the most ingenious piece of the entire armor. It wasn't just head protection, it was a complex system for dispersing impact. The kabuto's structure was made of curved iron plates riveted in a specific pattern called hoshi-bachi, where the protruding rivets were not merely decorative, but functioned as energy dispersion points. When a blow struck the helmet, the force was distributed across the entire surface through these rivets and curved plates, rather than concentrating the impact on a single point. This meant that even a powerful blow from a sword or mace rarely caused fatal damage to the samurai. Furthermore, the shikoro, the neck protection that hung from the helmet, was constructed with layers of plates that gradually increased in size as they descended, creating a barrier that protected not only against direct blows, but also against arrows coming from low angles. Many helmets also featured the meidate, a frontal ornament that, in addition to identifying the samurai clan and intimidating enemies, served as an intentional breaking point. If a very strong blow struck the meidate, it would break or detach, absorbing a significant portion of the impact's energy before it reached the warrior's head. The arm and leg protections followed the same philosophy of mobility with maximum protection. The kote protected the arms and hands, but was designed so that each joint could move freely. Small metal plates were sewn into padded fabric, creating a protection that flexed with the natural movement of the arm. The same was true of the sunite, which protected the shins and feet. Samurai needed to be able to run, jump, crouch, and perform acrobatic movements during combat, and these pieces guaranteed protection without sacrificing any agility. There are historical accounts of samurai who were able to climb low walls, cross rivers, and even swim short distances in full armor, something completely unthinkable for a medieval European knight. The technique of swimming in armor, called suiejutsu, was even part of the training of many samurai clans, especially those whose territories had many rivers and lakes. Now, let's talk about the most secret and deadly aspect of samurai armor. The urushi lacquer that covered each plate wasn't applied just once. The process involved between 10 and 20 layers of lacquer, each meticulously applied and left to dry for days before the next application. This process could take months for a complete suit of armor, but why so much work? Because the urushi lacquer created such a hard and smooth surface that it was almost impossible for any blade to gain enough traction to cut through it. It was like trying to cut polished glass with a knife. The blade simply slid. Furthermore, the lacquer was completely waterproof, meaning the armor wouldn't rust even after prolonged exposure to rain, snow, or moisture. In battles that lasted for days, with warriors camping in wet fields, this property was the difference between having functional armor and a useless pile of rusty metal. Tests conducted on samurai armor preserved in museums, some over 400 years old, showed that the lacquer still retains its waterproof properties and the underlying metal structure is intact, with no signs of corrosion. The chest piece of the armor, the do, was the centerpiece, and where the trick of invincibility truly shone. Unlike European armor, which was made from a single piece of molded metal, the do was composed of multiple sections that could move independently. There was the muna-ita protecting the upper chest, the wakibiki covering the sides, and the kusazuri, which were the plates that hung from the waist protecting the thighs and hips. Each section was connected by silk cords braided in specific patterns called odoshi, which allowed movement while keeping the structure together. The ingenious aspect here was that if a section was damaged in battle, it could be quickly replaced without having to discard the entire armor. More importantly, this modular construction distributed the weight of the impact. When a blow struck the chest, the force was absorbed not only by the front plate, but transmitted through the cords to the adjacent plates, dispersing the energy over a much larger area. This drastically reduced the chance of broken bones or damaged internal organs, even when the samurai received very strong blows. One often overlooked aspect was the psychological protection that armor offered. Samurai had absolute confidence in their armor because it was repeatedly tested before being used in battle. A common testing method was to have experienced archers fire arrows at the armor from different distances and angles. If any arrow penetrated, the armor was modified until it was completely arrow-proof. This knowledge gave samurai an almost supernatural courage in battle. They could charge into enemy archer lines, something that would be suicidal for less protected soldiers because they knew their armor would keep them safe. This confidence translated into a tactical aggressiveness that often broke enemy formations before hand-to-hand combat even began. Seeing a fully protected samurai advancing fearlessly while arrows ricocheted off his armor had a devastating effect on enemy morale. Ventilation was another crucial detail often overlooked. The Japanese climate could be extremely hot and humid in the summer, and fighting in armor under such conditions would be impossible without clever ventilation design. Samurai craftsmen created small, strategically placed openings between the plates, especially in the armpits and back of the chest, which allowed air circulation without compromising protection. Furthermore, the padded fabric worn under the armor, called shitagi, was made of silk or fine cotton that absorbed sweat and kept the warrior's skin relatively dry. This thermal comfort was not a luxury, it was a tactical necessity. An overheated and dehydrated samurai would lose coordination and speed, becoming vulnerable even with the best armor. Historical battles such as Kawanakajima in 1561, which took place in September when the heat was still intense, demonstrated that samurai could fight effectively for hours thanks to these ventilation systems. Maintaining armor was an art in itself and an essential part of Bushido. A samurai was personally responsible for keeping his armor in perfect condition. After each battle or training session, each plate was cleaned, inspected for damage, and the lacquer was touched up if necessary. The silk cords were checked for wear and replaced at the slightest sign of weakness. This maintenance ritual was not only practical, it was spiritual. The samurai meditated while tending to his armor, reflecting on the battle, on his mistakes and successes. The armor became an extension of his warrior soul, and this deep connection made the samurai know every inch of his protection, every strength, and every potential weakness. In combat, this intimate knowledge allowed him to move with absolute confidence, knowing exactly which movements his armor permitted and which angles offered maximum protection. The silk cords used to bind the plates, the odoshi, had a fascinating dual function. Besides holding the structure together and allowing flexibility, they acted as shock absorbers. When a blow struck the armor, the cord stretched slightly, absorbing some of the kinetic energy before it reached the samurai's body. It was a principle similar to what we see in modern climbing equipment, where elastic ropes absorb the impact of falls. Craftsmen tested different binding patterns, different cord thicknesses, until they found the perfect combination that offered maximum impact absorption without compromising the structure. Some odoshi patterns became trademarks of specific clans. The Kebiki odoshi, for example, was densely spaced and offered extra protection, while the Sugaki odoshi had wider spacing, being lighter but still very protective. The coloring of the armor was not merely aesthetic, it served important tactical purposes. Red, black, gold, and even multicolored lacquers were used, and each color had significance. Red, for example, was used because it disguised bloodstains, maintaining the samurai's intimidating appearance even when wounded. Black was preferred for nighttime operations because it reduced visibility. Some clans used specific colors for identification in battle, allowing allies to quickly recognize each other in the chaos of combat. But there was also a profound psychological function. Magnificently decorated armor, with vibrant colors and elaborate ornaments, communicated status, power, and wealth. Enemies often hesitated before attacking a samurai in particularly impressive armor, assuming he would be a formidable opponent. This hesitation, even if it lasted only a second, gave the samurai a critical advantage to make the first attack. If you enjoyed discovering the extraordinary secrets behind the armor that made the samurai truly untouchable on the battlefield, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more fascinating facts about samurai culture and the most legendary warriors in history.